Hey guys, welcome to Code Decode. In this video, we will be looking into most asked Spring interview questions for 5 plus years experience Java developers. So let's get started and look at such questions. Please do like, share and subscribe to support us. Your like, comments immensely help us to create more such content and reach to more of the people who are preparing for interviews like you. Whenever it comes to Spring interview questions, the two concepts for sure that will be always asked is dependency injection and inversion of control. These two are the basic concepts of Spring that is for sure will be asked in interviews. So what is dependency injection and what is inversion of control? Dependency injection and inversion of control are two basic fundamental concepts in Spring that work together to achieve loose coupling and enhance the modularity and maintainability of application. So basically, what is inversion of control? It is a design principle. Yes, it is a design principle. It's not a design pattern. It's a principle where the control of object creation, its management and its life cycle handling is all shifted from the application to an external container or framework. So what is inversion of control? So with the name only you can figure it out, right? The control is inverted or removed from the application to somebody else. That is inversion of control. The control of creating an object is taken from the application and given to somebody else like framework or the container. In our traditional Java programming, what we used to do? We used to create an object ourselves in the program. So a class is where we used to create our object and manage its dependencies. In contrast with inversion of control, in Spring Framework, the responsibility of creating and managing the life cycle of that object is taken from the class and is given to the Spring container or the Spring Frameworks container. So in context of Spring, the Spring IOC container is responsible for creation and management of the life cycle of those objects, and those objects are called as beans in Spring. So it's the IOC container who manages the life cycle of these beans and handles their dependencies and ensures that at the right time the right dependencies are injected into the right place. So by doing so, the application code becomes much more focused on its core logic and the overall architecture becomes much more loosely coupled, flexible and maintainable. So inversion of control, snatching the control of maintenance of the life cycle of an object or bean and is given to IOC container, that's inversion of control in Spring. Now what is dependency injection? IOC, as I told you, is a design principle. It's not an implementation. It's just a principle. It says you should do this. But how will you do this? The answer to how or the actual implementation of this principle is dependency injection. So dependency injection is an implementation of IOC in Spring. Just like I'll give you an example. Like JPA is a standardization. Hibernate is implementation of that standardization. Similarly, IOC is just a concept. But how will you implement that in real world? That is dependency injection. So it is a technique used to inject the dependencies of the beans that is created in Spring container into the class where it is required. I'll give you one example. We have a car class, we have an engine class. Both are separate classes. Now, to make the car up and running, you need an engine. So, you have two options. You create an object explicitly in car with a new keyword, engine E equals to new engine. That's tight coupling. If the car is garbage collected, engine is also gone. That's too much of tight coupling. There comes the concept of IOC and DI. What Spring will do? It will say you don't create any engine object in your car class like you used to do in plain Java coding. What you do, give the responsibility of creation of both the objects to Spring container. Only the thing that you need to do is to implement the dependency injection to inject the dependency of engine bean into class bean, car class. Thus, even if your car instance is destroyed, the engine bean is safe with Spring container. So rather than you creating the bean or the object of engine, it is created by IOC container and managed by IOC container. You just inject it using @auto annotation. That's it. So in other words, the dependencies, in our case engine's dependency, is injected into car dependency, into car class from outside, typically by IOC container. So that is dependency injection. So IOC is a principle and way to implement it is dependency injection. This was about the basic Spring concept, dependency injection and inversion of control. We'll look into one more very important question usually asked with experienced people. What are the common design patterns that you have used in your Spring application? Now everybody knows that enterprise level applications are not created with plain old Java classes. Always you will use some framework here and there. So this question is to analyze your understanding for both Java design patterns and the framework knowledge like Spring. So it's the combination of two core concepts. Whenever you work with a Spring application, few design patterns are automatically in that application. For example, singleton. Now, singleton design pattern is the most fundamental design pattern in Spring. By default, Spring beans are singleton. Means there is only one instance of a bean per Spring container. Remember, this is where most of the people gets confused in a singleton design pattern. What we are asked is, what is singleton design pattern in Spring? So this means that only one instance of a bean per container. If you have multiple IOC containers, you can have multiple instances across each Spring container. And that is the difference between the Java design pattern singleton design pattern and Spring singleton design pattern. There you have JVM. So you have one instance per JVM. Here you have one instance per Spring container. Remember, this is a very important difference. The for sure interview will confuse you, like how singleton pattern is different in Spring and how is it different from Java. So that's the basic logic. One instance per container is in Spring framework, one instance per JVM is in Java design pattern logic. So which design pattern you have seen the most in Spring application? You can always go with the singleton design pattern. Because whenever a bean is created in Spring container, it is always by default created with the scope of singleton. That means only one bean will be shared across whole application and will be there in the Spring container. So whenever you make any change in that bean in Spring container, that change will be reciprocated or will be visible across the complete Spring application. So what does that mean? It means that since you have made your beans all singleton, this ensures that beans are shared across the application. Thus, it reduces the resource usage and promote the efficient object management. But suppose in some use cases, I do not want this, right? I don't want that my bean should be shared, because if I'm changing something, that should be remain inside that class boundary only. It should not go beyond that, or it should not go globally across the whole application. Then what can you do? Do you have any option to remove the singleton design pattern? Answer is yes. Spring does provide us with the customized configuration of these beans scope. So you can configure your bean either as singleton, which is by default, or as a prototype. That means each instance per request done to the Spring container will have a different instance created as a bean in the container. So yes, you can always have a prototype scoped bean also in Spring container. That means that bean will not be shared across the application. Rather, it will be specific to each call done to Spring container for that bean. So every call, a new instance will be created in container. So this is the very first and a very common design pattern which you always work knowingly or unknowingly with Spring framework, because all the beans that you create are by default singleton. The second very important one is factory design pattern. Now let's first see what was factory design pattern. Factory design pattern was a way to abstract the process of creation and management of object. You just call a method and you get the object out of it. You don't know the logic behind how the object is getting created. It is the factory who keeps the object ready, created and manage its life cycle. You just call the factory and get your object. No logic is revealed to outside people. Now the question comes is, okay, this was factory design pattern. But how do you implement this factory design pattern in Spring? So remember, Spring IOC container is the factory. Why? Because in our case, our classes do not create the objects. So our car was a class. But engine's object is not created in the car class. Rather, there is dependency injected into the car class. So who was the one who created the bean for car and engine? It was inversion of control container of Spring. So IOC container is the factory who creates and manages the bean's life cycle. What you do is you just call your container and ask for the dependencies using the dependency injection. So factory design pattern is used in Spring to create and manage bean. So this is also a very basic design pattern which you knowingly or unknowingly always use when you have a Spring application. Always the beans are created using the factory design pattern. Created by whom and who is the factory? IOC container is the factory. Beans are created and managed in IOC container. Based on their configuration in XML or Java based configurations, depends upon how you give the bean creation definition. And thus, we can say that the factory design pattern abstracts the process of object or bean creation and allow for more flexible and loosely coupled configuration of object in Spring container. Now the two important classes or interfaces are the factory bean and the factory method, which will allow the custom factory implementation to create beans programmatically. This much knowledge is enough for you to understand as of now that to create any bean in Spring, we always use factory design pattern. And who is the factory of those beans that is created? IOC container of Spring is the factory for creating and managing the life cycle of those beans. And they abstract the logic of creation of those beans. You just have to inject it in where you want. Hence, you being a client, you are abstracted from the logic of creation of these beans. You just call the factory and get the dependency injected in your car class. So these were two very basic ones. Now third, dependency injection design pattern. Remember, IOC was a principle. Dependency injection is a design pattern. Now, again, this is a very basic design pattern used in Spring application. Unintentionally, intentionally, you always use this. So, dependency injection is a core design pattern used in Spring. What does it do? It facilitates loose coupling between classes. I've given an example of car and engine. If your car dies, doesn't mean even the object that is created for engine will die. Since it is created as a bean in the container, both can reside independently without having any dependency on each other. Thus, facilitates the loose coupling. None of the object is dependent on another object for its life. So, dependency injection involves providing the dependency of engine inside the car class and create them internally in the Spring container. Now, Spring's IOC container performs dependency injection by injecting the dependency into car class. There are multiple ways to do the dependency injection. Constructor injection, setter injection, method injection, using annotation XML based configurations, using Java based configurations. Multiple ways are there to perform dependency injection, and that's how you can inject the dependency of one class into another class who needs it. So, three basic patterns we have seen: singleton, factory and DI design pattern. Now, from here, let's go one step above. We will see some complex design patterns used by Spring also. So, next is template method pattern. So, template method design pattern is used in Spring's template classes. Now, when you are working with the databases, you can see you have multiple templates or classes used. So, what are templates? Templates are the places where common operations are encapsulated. For example, I want to do a database query or I want to save something in the database. There is a specific JDBC template for database queries. Suppose you want to send an email. So, you will always create to, body, CC, subject. All these things are common. So, what you can do is you can create a template. For example, Java has given us for mail sending the Java mail sender template. It will have to, from, subject, body, everything. So that is the template. So Spring is filled with such templates. Hence, when you use those templates, you intentionally or unintentionally use the template design pattern also. For example, if you might have used JDBC or Hibernate or mail sending technique, then for sure you have used the template design pattern in Spring application. So again, template is where all the common things are kept. So template class provides you the consistent approach to perform the repetitive task. For example, JDBC template to do the repetitive task of SQL query creation, executing the query, handling the results, managing the transactions, all such things can be done using the JDBC template. It is a well-defined set of instructions which you can use as a template across the whole application. So these templates define the structure and flow of operation, while the specific details are left to us to call or implement using customized implementation. Now, for example, you are using the Hibernate or JDBC template. You need to tell which URL to connect for the database creation and connection. You need to tell the username passwords. For mail sending, you need to tell what is the to value, what is the from value, what is the subject, what is the body. Just that you will be using to, from, body is written in the template, but what are the actual values of that to, from, body, subject will be decided and created by us, the developers. So thus, for example, if you use JDBC template, this template provides you the method for executing the SQL queries, handling the result sets, managing transactions, while we, the developers, can provide custom implementation to handle the logic of where to execute these queries, the database URLs, the usernames, passwords, the connectivity, specific configurations, all those things will be given by us. So that's how we have used the template method design pattern when we are using any Hibernate or JPA or mail sending or JDBC templating in Spring framework. Next is proxy design pattern. Now we have seen multiple videos where we have implemented the AOP. You know, in AOP, what we do? We do segregation of cross-cutting concerns such as logging, security, transaction management, all such things which are segregated from the core business logic where you just write your business code. So segregation of such cross-cutting concerns from the business logic is what we do in AOP. Now, proxy design pattern is used whenever you have used AOP. So, if you have implemented AOP, that means you have implemented the proxy design pattern of Java in Spring. And how do we do that? So, in Spring, the proxy pattern is used to create the dynamic proxies. So, proxy design pattern create proxies. In AOP, if you remember, we have two type of proxies created. The JDK dynamic proxies and CGLib proxies. And these proxies are created around the target objects. So suppose I have a business logic written. Now I have written @ before of this. That means a proxy will be created who will intercept the method as soon as the target object is about to execute. Just before that, your cross-cutting concern will apply at that point and will be implemented there. So what you have done, you have created a proxy who intercepts all the calls. And as soon as it sees that, yes, my business logic is about to get executed, and since I have used @ before annotation in my AOP, just before implementing or executing that call, it's the task of that proxy to inject that cross-cutting concern just before the business logic execution is done. With AOP, where all you can implement these proxies, you can implement these proxies or wrappers across the whole application around the target object. So you can use @ before to implement it before the target object, @ after to have the proxy implemented after the target object, or around also is possible. We have seen all these things in the previous videos, where we have seen AOP in very much in depth detail. So if somebody asks you, have you implemented AOP? Have you implemented proxy design pattern? you would say yes if you have implemented the AOP concept in your application. AOP basically internally uses the proxy design pattern. Now next is observer design pattern. If you remember, observer design pattern works with publisher subscriber pattern. So there will be one publisher who is going to publish your event, and there will be multiple listeners who are going to observe that particular event. So how do we implement the observer design pattern in Spring? So Spring has its own event handling mechanism. What is an event? An event is a way to communicate with each other without tight coupling. So whenever one application has to send some event or message to another application or the component, then one will become a publisher, others all will become the subscribers or the listeners. And those listeners are observers to those published events. So components can publish events and other components can subscribe to those events and react accordingly. So the key participants of observer design pattern is a publisher who generates the event and notifies the observer, while the observer is the one who listens to the event which is published by the publisher. In Spring, we have two different interfaces to handle the real-time event handling. That is done by application event publisher to publish the event and application listener to create an observer and listen to the events that is published by any application event publisher. So whenever an event is published using the event publisher, Spring looks around for the registered listeners who are interested in that particular event. If the listener is found, it is notified and that observer can react accordingly. Developers can also create their custom event classes by extending the application event class and creating your own application event publisher and application listeners for observer design part. So if by any case you are using the Spring's internal event handling using application listener and application event publisher, then you have by default used the observer design pattern of Java. Now next very important part of Spring application is how it implements the facet design pattern. What is facet design pattern? Let's understand this first. Facet design pattern provides a simplified interface to interact with a complex subsystem or set of classes. Now I'll give you an example, okay? The task of facet design pattern is to hide the complexity of the system and provide a high-level interface to make it easier to use. Now how is it implemented in Spring is the question. So in Spring, the facet design pattern is oftenly used in context with a web application with MVC architecture. What happens with model view controller architecture? There is a controller. Controller is the one who is responsible for handling all the HTTP requests and responses from and to the client. So this controller becomes the facet to client. Why? Because facet design pattern says I'll hide the complexity of business logic, database interaction and everything. You as a client hit the controller, which is a facet, and will get a response from the controller itself. You don't have to think beyond the hitting of URL what happens. Internally what business logic runs, internally what database queries runs. You don't need to know anything. I'll hide every complexity of internal handling of that request and I'm going to provide you with the response. That's how with Spring MVC, if you have implemented as an architecture in your application, by default you have implemented the facet design pattern of Java also. So if you as a developer has created a controller class, you have implemented the facet design pattern, which we always do. So we always use facet design pattern with Spring Boot applications. So here, these controller classes that you create becomes the facet or is an intermediate between the client's request and the underlying business logic, underlying database interaction and all those things. So controller handles the incoming request, process them, hides the complexity and give the response back to the client. Hence it is a facet design pattern. And your controller is a facet. So with this, the controller shields the complexity of the internal subsystem that you have created and it just presents a very simplified interface to clients to hit using a simple URL. be it Postman, be it browser, be it front-end application, doesn't matter. Thus, implementing such MVC architecture in your application also implements the facet design pattern automatically, which actually improves the segregation of concerns, encapsulation, modularity, loose coupling, and all such good things you will get with this particular design pattern being implemented in Spring application. This allows you to clearly define boundaries between different layer of application, be it controller layer, be it model, view, business, repository, all becomes the differentiated clear boundaries. And hence your code is more maintainable, easy to handle and modularized. So till now, most of the design patterns you have used knowingly or unknowingly by default in Spring. But the strategy design pattern is one of the design pattern you implement only by your own wish. So if you remember, we have created one video on strategy design pattern where we have multiple ways of encryption or encoding. Now, at the runtime, you need to decide and take an input from the client which method you want to use to encode or encrypt your data. And at runtime only you decide which type of implementation will be called. So deciding or switching at the runtime based on the user input which bean to be called is the strategy design pattern in Java. Now how do you implement this in Spring is the question. In strategy design pattern, developers define multiple implementation of the specific interface. So we had one basic interface encryption and we have multiple beans created out of that interface like SHA-1, SHA-2, multiple strategies to encrypt and encode. Now which one to be called at runtime will be decided based on the user input from the URL or controller he hits. In Spring, developer can define different strategies as separate beans implementing the same interface. If you remember in the code also what we have done. We have created one interface and all other are the beans created with @ component. Now through configuration, we can decide like which particular bean to be called at runtime based on the controller hit with which parameter. If the controller's input parameter says encrypt and encode using SHA-1, then the interface remains the encryption, but the specific bean for that particular SHA-1 will be injected by the Spring container at runtime in the application, and encryption will be done using SHA-1. So that strategy design pattern you can use in Spring. Thus it promotes flexibility and enables developer to modify the behavior at runtime, which is very useful when dealing with different algorithms. So these were different encryption or encoding algorithms. Business rules, business variations and all such things can be handled at runtime with the user input and interaction with your Spring application. So that's why I say till now most of the design patterns you have used with or without your knowledge. By default, Spring has singleton design pattern implemented. By default, it has factory design pattern implemented. By default, if you have used AOP, by default it has proxy design pattern also implemented. And many more such previous ones implemented. But strategy design pattern, you are given a customized way to implement it. If you want to implement strategy design pattern, then you create your own interface. You create multiple bean of the same interface and call them at runtime based on your conditions. So this is not something which you can do unintentionally. You have to intentionally implement the strategy design pattern in Spring. Now a very important question, what are different types of dependency injection in Spring? So we have mainly two different types of dependency injection, that is constructor and setter injection. So constructor injection involves providing the dependencies through constructor of the class. Let me give you a quick example. So this is a very simple test application as of now. I'll be creating two entities, car and engine here. So this is the car class, which is a component. This is an engine class, which is a component. Now car needs engine, so it has declared its field as engine. If it would have been a normal Java class, it would have created with new keyword also. Private engine equals to new engine. But I don't want to do that. This is tight coupling and this is not how Spring Framework creates beans. Since we have annotated it with component, it is already a bean created in Spring container. So you just need to inject its dependency. The two ways to inject this dependency is through constructor injection or setter injection. Here I have created a constructor of car where I am assigning it to my engine. That's constructor injection. Or I can have multiple setters and getters for engine E, and during the setter I am going to inject with AutoWire. So that's dependency injections two type, the constructor injection and the setter injection. Simple. So what does constructor injection do? Constructor injection provides the dependencies to constructor of the class. This was the constructor. The name of this is same as this. So with the constructor you inject the dependency of what all things you need. Like for example engine I needed. So I've passed this as an argument in the constructor when the bean is created. So Spring Container use specified constructor to create the bean and inject the necessary dependency. It is particularly useful where mandatory dependency should be present when the bean is created. So I know that my car cannot work without engine. So I will not wait for my car to be created if engine is not there. So remember, if you have such a condition where engine's dependency is a necessity and should be created before the car's instance is created, use constructor injection. Else use setter injection when engine and car can independently exist. So when you don't want your car's instance to be created without engines being properly created, go for constructor injection. What will happen if engine's bean is not properly created? For example, if I commented this, if it is not properly created, then even car's bean will not be created. So let me try running this and you will get an error. So you can see, consider defining engine as a component in your configuration. If you don't do that, then even application will not get up and running. Your car's bean will not be created until engine's bean is not created. So that is why if you want to make sure your class which needs the dependency should have the mandatory dependency, go for constructor injection. The second is setter injection, where you provide the dependency through setter of the class. This was the setter and you provide the dependency of engine E through the setter. In this approach, the class provides setter for dependency it requires. The Spring Container uses setter method to inject the required dependency, and setter injection is useful for optional dependencies when you need to change the dependency of a bean after its creation. Remember, it is useful for optional dependency. That is a major difference between constructor and setter injection. So suppose if I don't have this here, my car's bean will be created because it is annotated with component, but engine's bean will not be created because it doesn't have @ component. Hence, being independent of each other, any which ways car instance will be created in container, and then your application will cry that engine cannot be created. The third is a method injection. Method injection provides the dependencies through special method of a class. Instead of using constructor or setter, you can annotate a method with @AutoWire to indicate that it requires the dependency. Spring Container will invoke this method and provide the necessary dependency whenever we are creating the bean. This is rarely used. Most of the time you use the field injection, that is, over here only you provide @AutoWire. Second is constructor, third is setter. Fourth is method injection, that also you can do but rarely we use it. Now we know about setter and constructor injection. What is the basic difference between them? One we have already covered. When you have mandatory dependencies to be injected, go for constructor injection. But when it comes to optional dependencies, your bean doesn't depend upon the injected bean's life, then go for setter injection. Let's see what all other scenarios are there where we can use a constructor and when we can use the setter one. Remember, one important aspect will come, that is cyclic dependency. Never forget to explain that whenever you explain the constructor and setter injection differences. We will be seeing that next now. So we know that constructor and setter injections are two types of dependency injection. In the previous video we have seen that. The constructor injection, the required dependencies are passed via constructor, while in case of setter it is passed through setter of the class. Second, the class is responsible for initializing its variable with the provided dependency. It enforces all mandatory dependencies are supplied before creating an object of car. Engine's dependency should be created. Thus, it makes more suitable for classes with mandatory dependencies required. This is something we have already covered. Now, once the object is created, its dependencies cannot be changed, resulting in more immutable and thread-safe object. Remember, from the Java perspective, this is very important to understand, okay? Since the dependency of engine is injected in car at the constructor level, that means during the object creation level, it becomes immutable. You cannot change the engine's dependency now because before creating the car's dependency, engine's dependency is injected into that. Hence, it is thread safe and immutable. You cannot modify it. While when it comes to setter injection, you provide it through the setter method. The class exposes the setter for each dependency it requires. Now here in case of car, we just need one dependency engine. So if I need hundreds of these such dependencies, then I need to write hundreds of such setters. That is why setter is not that good when it comes to the n number of line of code, because n number of setters you have to write for n number of dependencies you require. Thus it exposes n number of setters for n number of dependencies required. And then container uses these setter to inject the required dependencies after creating the object. This is very important. Remember, these lines are very important. After creating the object only. So with constructor injection, the object is created later on. First, the dependencies are resolved. While in case of setter injection, first the object is created for car. And then later on with the setter methods, each dependency is injected into the created object. Thus, you can have the optional dependencies also, and it provides the flexibility to change the dependencies at runtime. It is not immutable, it is rather too much mutable, which can be changed at runtime because object is created first and then the dependencies are injected into it. So when to use a setter injection? Always use setter injection when you have the circular dependencies. Why? Let me make you understand why. Now suppose I have this car class. It has engine dependency here. I'll comment this as of now. Also I have engine who has car's dependency and injected via constructor injection. So engine's constructor has car dependency and car's constructor has engine's dependency injected with constructor injection. When I try to run this, what will happen? It will give you an exception of circular dependency. So you can see the dependencies of some beans forms a cycle. Spring is that efficient to understand that your car defined in this car.class requires engine's dependency to be created and engine requires car dependency to be created. How did we create the cyclic dependency? In car, we have given the engine's dependency in constructor, and in engine we have given car's dependency in constructor injection. So when there is a cyclic dependency, this circular dependency is discouraged. It says update your application to remove the cyclic dependency between beans. So to prevent such kind of issues, to have the circular dependency existing, you can go for setter injection. Even if your objects are created because the constructor is there already, the two objects are created and later on the dependencies are injected. Thus, when you have circular dependencies, go for setter injection. So, when to use the constructor injection, when to use a setter injection? When you have mandatory dependencies to be provided, that too before the creation of the bean, go for constructor injection. If you want immutability, that means the dependencies of the class remain constant throughout its life cycle, constructor injection is preferred. And safety and readability, it makes the dependencies explicit. Basically what you do is, in the constructor itself, you define all the dependencies. So at one place, you can see all the dependencies required by one of the class. When it comes to setter, you have to define n number of setters and mark it as auto-wired, and that reduces the readability. But when to use setter injection? When you have optional dependencies. So if a class has optional dependencies that are not essentially used for its functionality, then setter injection is good. When it comes to flexibility of changing the dependencies at runtime, then setter injection is good. Also, this is very important. When you have circular dependencies where A depends on B and B depends upon A, then to break this deadlock of A's object not getting created until B's object is not created and B's object not getting created until A's object is not created, because both of them relies on the constructor injection, to break that situation, we have setter injection, where the constructors are empty for both A and B. Thus, A and B can independently be created, and later on, once they are created, A's dependency can be injected via setter injection to B, and B's dependency can be injected into A's B after the objects are created. Setter allows you to create instances first and later on set the dependencies. So you might use a combination of both setter and getter as and when needed, depending upon the situation of your application. Now I have many more questions to cover for Spring interview questions for experienced also, like bean life cycle, exit, post construct, pre-construct, pre-destroy, post. Many things are to be covered. If you want me to cover more such experienced level interview questions, let me know in the comment section. I'll create more such videos. Also, should we continue with the Spring Boot or Spring or microservices? That also we need from you. Because based on your comments only, we will be able to move ahead with which next series that you need. I'll be waiting for your comments and suggestions in the comment section. Thank you.